When I was diagnosed with cancer and you confront your own mortality, you have no other choice but to confront your fear and find a way through it. And I think once you do that in something major, you become more resilient, you become stronger, you become less fearful. And obviously, the result of that is more powerful against situations that would seek either intentionally or unintentionally to make you fearful. And so you reclaim that power.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who is out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. Today, my guest is Maryann Weston. She's going to be talking about how cancer became the catalyst for awakening dormant psychic abilities she had shut down as a child. Maryann had a long career as an award-winning journalist and a writer. She's worked for nonprofits, consulted with the Australian government on communication and public relations strategies. After her cancer diagnosis, she began to reawaken these dormant psychic abilities and now works as a psychic and a clairvoyant. She does not work with individuals much anymore because it was very draining for her, so she works on several platforms on YouTube where she discusses a variety of global events and politics throughout the world. It's a fascinating talk how she has merged these two passions of hers, writing and communication and journalism, with her psychic abilities. I really enjoyed talking to her. Let's jump into it. This is Maryann Weston. All right, Maryann Weston, all the way in Australia, 10 a.m. tomorrow for me. And I'm in Los Angeles about 3 p.m. And I'm so happy to meet you. I haven't had, as I was telling you before we started, I haven't had anybody in the realm of psychic for a long time, number of years. So I'm excited to talk to you.
Well, thank you for having me on, Bob, and it's lovely to join you. You're okay regarding the fires where you are? You weren't affected?
Yes, I was very close to the fires. It didn't reach my home, but it certainly was in the air, and I know people that did lose their homes, and not quite a few. And it was, I would call it apocalyptic. That's what it felt like. It was absolutely terrifying.
Yes, and, we had that in 2019-20 here in Australia, and I would use those words too. It was absolutely terrible. When we looked at maps, almost all of Australia was on fire. It was terrible.
It's amazing. You don't think about that even happening, day-to-day living, but then when it does, you're just, you're completely inundated by the power of nature and the helplessness that there is when that stuff is happening. It's so intense. It's there's nothing anyone can do. We had the fire, and then we had these terrible winds that were fanning the fire, and very dry vegetation, and pretty scary stuff. And who knows what's next? It's not what we expected.
That's the world we live in at the moment, a very uncertain world, and I think people are looking for answers beyond the here and now to explain certain things because they are confused. It's almost like it's a bit of an upside down world, and so many conflicts going on in the world, and so much destability in many ways, and not to mention economies are very tight. And so, people are looking for relief, or they're looking to ask why. Why is this happening? And some of those reasons can be found if you make those spiritual connections. You can start to get insights and answers for yourself. not necessarily for everybody else, but the answers for yourself and what you need to do in the current circumstances and decisions about how you need to lead your life. And just before we started, you were talking about really being in the here and now, and uh, living life beyond that worry and fear, and being in the present moment. And I think there's a lot of value in doing that in these particular times that we're living in.
Yeah, it's a really. I was talking to my wife about this morning about fear. Because she
Mm.
woke up with some news she had seen, and the specifics don't really matter. But I said, I go, the really challenging thing is not to walk around afraid, because it doesn't help any situation anyway. But that feeling, it just gets on everything, and then you're living in fear, and it's a really tough way to live. And it also, if there are forces that want power, being afraid is not the way to go up against those forces. It's the opposite. It's to sort of get that sort of inner resolve, and it's kind of
Mm.
like when you have a bad nightmare. If you turn to the thing that's going after you and go, get out of here, it'll vanish in a dream.
Mhm.
If you can remember
That's it.
to do that. And I've done it a few times very successfully. Other times I wake up like, oh, what happened?
Yeah, but see, that's you're confronting your fear. Unfortunately, fear comes from it's a feeling, so it's in the subconscious. It's not something we have conscious control
Yeah.
over. And so you really have to set your intention and your willpower to overcome the fear. And if you don't have that intention, if you're at the mercy of it and you don't fight back or you don't push through it, then you stay stuck in the fear and the worry. And unfortunately, that's a game, really a mental game we play with ourselves, because if I'm fearful of something right now, today, there's no feeling. I can spend the whole day in misery with fearful emotions. That isn't going to change the thing that I'm fearful of. The only thing that will change that is certain actions that I do in the present moment. And so managing fear becomes a very active thing that you need to do, an intentional thing. And you in your nightmares, I've done exactly the same thing. When I was being chased, I would turn around and fight back. It's the same in the spiritual world. There are all sorts of forces out there, and many are benign, and of course, but it is a realm made up of all sorts of energies, if I can just put it like that. And in the line of work that I do, I have to be very conscious of protecting myself and standing strong in my authenticity to manage all of those energies and subsequently all my fears, because what I did as a child, I didn't have those skills. That's a learnt thing. And I was at the mercy of a lot when I was a kid. And that's really why I shut a lot of things down and tried to look for logical explanations or ignoring things. And I suppressed a lot of what I'm doing now. But when I was diagnosed with cancer and you confront your own mortality, you have no other choice but to confront your fear and find a way through it. And I think once you do that in something major, you become more resilient, you become stronger, you become less fearful. And obviously, the result of that is more powerful against situations that would seek either intentionally or unintentionally to make you fearful. And so you reclaim that power. But that is a learnt process. And so anyone that's feeling fearful now, it is really the ball's in your court to take certain actions to move through that fear.
Yeah, I had a friend who used to say, if you want to be afraid, think scary thoughts.
Oh, it's like it is. That's exactly what it is, because that old saying, your imagination runs away with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to me, it's all about thought management and the various techniques that you can use to manage your thoughts so that you're not at the mercy of that kind of fear or negativity or chaos, or, the things that hit us all day long, if we're not sort of, on a focus of what actually is important.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when I was diagnosed, I had a lot of tasks, a lot of jobs to do in terms of I had to manage the pain, I had to manage the treatment, I had to make decisions about the treatment that I was going to have. I had to confront that imagination running away. And I also had to look at healing, which it's a less active or assertive process. Healing is something where you open yourself up to in a and I'm not saying a passive way, because there's no passive or aggressiveness in the kind of healing I'm talking about. Things like meditation and visualization and spirituality and faith and hope. They're very important things in any healing if you want to survive. So I had a lot of jobs to do, if you can look at it like that, and I had that really propelled me through that fear and worry. I'm not saying I got it right all the time, but when it comes to your own survival, then you really have to find ways through that fear.
It was something I was reading in the bio that was sent about you. It was about that you tapped into the psychic abilities that had been dormant, which implies that they were there when you were young.
Oh, absolutely, they were.
And
Yeah.
why did they go dormant? I'm asking you now. What happened that they went dormant, and how did you reawaken those things and tap into it?
Well, I remember very early on having dreams, and people call them visions. I don't even like that word. It's clairvoyance. It's like a film playing out in your head where you see certain things, certain outlines, and sometimes that's married with clairaudience and clairsentience, which is a knowing. And you put all that together and you're able to do psychic and mediumship work. But when I was little, I had all of those things, but I was so frightened of them. So I had dreams. I had the ability to know what others were feeling. So very, very empathetic, acutely sensitive. I could see spirit outlines in my bedroom at home, which absolutely terrified me. So I became very scared of the dark, of the blackness. And so I had to, sleep with lights on. And I mean mortally terrified of, because I had no mentors, I had no guides, I had nothing. I was one of 6 children with a father that was a farmer and out in the fields most of the day, and a mother that worked full time, and elder sister who used to look after us, or my grandmother who was, I can remember shelling, peas a lot in the kitchen. I just didn't have anybody that I could take that with to, and I just became very, very frightened of it. At the same time as I was and I just didn't. I turned away. Basically, I turned away. If I saw something, I hid under the covers. If I felt something, I would struggle with that. If I saw something, I would just ignore it. I just ignored everything, and really was very uncomfortable in that part of me right throughout my childhood, at school as well. Because when you're sensing how other people are feeling, or even thinking to a certain degree, it's uncomfortable, because people will walk into a room and they will have a sense, because we've all got these abilities. It's all within us. It's just how, if you turn the dial up, whether mine's on 9 and yours might be on 3 at the moment. If you were to have a terrible event and actively connected with spirit, your dial might go up. But people, we know each other better than what we think. And so we often put a false persona out there. But you will know that when you really connect with people, your best friends, your closest friends, you will be able to, I feel that, Jenny's going through this hard time. I'm going to ring her today. Well, you're much more in tune with that side of each other because you've connected. I'm getting off topic here, but I'm thinking I'm thinking as you're asking these questions. Mm-hmm. That kind of was the status quo until when I went to a Catholic school, and I remember having in 5th class, which I think is your junior school in America, at about 9 or 10 years of age, I had a relief teacher from England, Miss Ralph, and we were writing a 1-page composition little story thing. She was big on the creativity because creativity is one way to access your intuition. And I wrote this composition about how I felt when I wrote that I went into trance and I was able to see pictures, and I wrote the pictures. Now, she called me up after class and she said, "Is this how you feel?" And she, asked me about what I'd written. And anyway, that was fine. She said, "I want to encourage you to continue doing this." And so, but in the Catholic school, that was interpreted as she has a vivid imagination and she's a good writer. Mm-hmm. So I was actually telling her what was happening, that these pictures were unfolding, but it was interpreted as a vivid imagination. So I became a writer. They told me what I was, so I became a writer. And that's what I did for most of my life until I was diagnosed with cancer. As I got into early adulthood, I bought my first tarot card set. I was always interested in esoteric matters. I found out about energy grids, ley lines, all of the subjects, because I'm a voracious learner and consumer of knowledge. So that's the Sagittarian coming out in me. And at the same time, I pursued a very orthodox path through university, 3 degrees later, and, managerial levels later in my work. I was very much, I'd invested a lot into my orthodox career. So when cancer came along, I had let all of these other things lapse, and I was very much living in the real, in the 3D world. Mm-hmm. I nearly said real world, but it's not the real world. Yeah. It was then when as I said, I was forced to really overcome that fear. If you think back to childhood, fear suppressed things. I had to manage the fear. And so the more I moved through the fear, the more I opened myself up for a flow, and I'm just going to say a flow of spiritual insight, connection, signs, direction. It just came flooding in. And that was one of the reasons that I think I managed my pretty harsh treatment in the manner that I did. I went deliberately and sourced out people who had used visualization to heal from cancer. People, there was one, I can't remember her name, but she had used laughter to heal herself from cancer. There was all sorts of stories. So opening up the possibilities. Okay, I'm going to explore some of this. And the more that I built these meditation, visualization practices into my daily living, I was walking every day. I was constantly seeing white feathers everywhere. I was getting clairaudience starting to happen again. I have had clairaudience before cancer, but not to the level that I have now.
That means you were hearing things. Yes. Auditory.
Yes, yes,
Singing,
and
music? What kind of sounds?
well, it was really my father coming through to me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, after he passed, I was asleep and I was with my mother at their house, and I was asleep, and all of a sudden, in his voice, and I cannot even describe how freaked out I was. This was before cancer, and he said, "Look after your mother." And I was so scared. This was 2 days after he passed. I jumped out of the bed, turned on the light, and slept with the light on for the rest, and thought, what the hell? What's going on? When I'd had cancer, but I didn't know I had cancer. I was hearing his voice over a period of about a week, and he was just yelling my name, Maryann, and I'd sit bolt upright and what is going on? And in a way, because that was provoking fear still, I was shutting that down still. So I was getting all these warnings. I had crows cawing everywhere. It was like the Alfred Hitchcock, the Birds movie. Everywhere I went, there were murder of black crows everywhere, and they were loud and loud and loud. And I was at a meditation class, and I said, I don't know what's going on to the class. They just won't let up. It's like it really started to worry me. Like it was starting to, because I wasn't connected, and I wasn't looking at the signs, and I wasn't listening still. And they said, well, we think that they're trying to tell you something. And it became a sense of urgency. My father waking me up in the middle of the night, the crows descending everywhere I went. In the end, I went and had the tests because there was some part that knew that there was something wrong. And I believe that at that time, my passed over loved ones were trying to get my attention, and to let me know that something was indeed wrong. And post cancer now, because I embraced and I got rid of the filter that I'd put over everything, the wall that I'd put up. I now hear things quite regularly in the work that I do. I am very conscious. They're not shouting at me anymore. There's this quieter, more gentler voice that I hear of spirit. And yeah, the clairvoyance, of course, that vivid imagination. Post-cancer, I worked with shamans, I worked with mediums. I studied with them, and I studied with multiple astrologers, and I'd always read tarot, but I went back and studied with a very gifted tarot diviner here in Australia, and the medium that I was studying with, I studied over probably a year with her, and her remarks to me, I mean, I was doing readings for her about her passed over beloved dog. And at the end of my sessions with her, she said, "You're probably one of the most clairvoyant people I've ever met." And that seems to be that the film in the third eye, the vivid imagination that they diagnosed me with in the Catholic school, that seems to be my most potent ability.
I guess different people have different strengths in their
They do
things, and that's yours. That's probably your strongest.
It is, yeah.
Now, I'm sure there's people that listen to this and they're skeptical, and which is probably a healthy thing to be, because then when something is shown to you and you're skeptical and you see it, it makes you more of somebody that goes, oh, maybe there is something to it. Yes. I had an experience years ago. Wasn't well at the time. It wasn't I have a friend whose wife is whatever ability she has. She did a lot of tarot stuff. So I said, oh, well, let me do a reading. I'm curious. I was just curious. I didn't even know what she did. And we got to some card that was supposedly it had to do with work and career. And at the time I'd been doing the same thing for a long time, and it was my identity basically. And the card came up, and it was somebody jumping off of a cliff into the darkness. I don't know the name of the card. I don't. You probably do. I don't know.
Yeah.
And she goes, "Oh, your career is going to the one you're in now is going to end, and you're going to be doing something else." And I went, "No, no, 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 no. That's not." Well, 6 to 8 months later, that actually did happen. The bottom fell out of what I was doing, and I had this opportunity that kind of came up, and I made a phone call, and I just said, all right, well, I'll make the phone call, and it changed my entire career. I mean, one sort of fed into the next one, but they were very different careers in a sense. I mean, they were both in the arts, but it was still this thing. And I remember just looking at that card and the knowing that she seemed to have. At first she was like, "Uh-oh," and then she was like, "No, it's okay," And it was a kind of a cool moment. I don't remember anything else about the reading other than, it was an experience, and I didn't take it as much until the things sort of changed, and I looked back and I went, "How did?" And it's not like she knew anything. It's like some information came in this way, and it's so easy to just go, "Oh, it's coincidence, and it's this, it's that, it's not real." Well, it was real for me because it actually happened, but who knows? Who knows? It was kind of very mysterious. I still I can't quantify anything like that. It happened. It did happen.
The last 2 years that I've done annual predictions, I think it was 2020, was it 2023 or 2024? I can't remember. I predicted that the Pope was going to die. The old Pope was going to die. And within 3 days of the predictions, he did. The current predictions in 2025, 2 days before the South Korean plane crashed, and unfortunately, you don't want to be predicting tragedy.
No.
But when things come to me, I said, I'm seeing a plane. It doesn't crash in the air. It's on the runway, and it's breaking up on the runway. And then we're going to have things to do with planes, plane accidents, and air safety is going to come, forward as a theme. Within 2 days, unfortunately, that crash took place on the ground in South Korea, and souls, a number of souls perished. And people say, well, I have no control what comes through. I don't generally predict death. I don't like to do that, even if I see it. I think that's not what we should be doing. But occasionally things come through so strongly that you do release those predictions. But at the time, I've often wondered, what is the purpose of this for me? What value does it have? Well, I guess there's the value of warnings. I guess if anyone has the power to look at air safety fairly closely, they should be doing so. I mean, I don't want to freak anyone out. It's also around, I'm not responsible for the tragedy happening, obviously. But when people hear predictions that are correct, and if you've got a good run rate, if you like, or if you have a good record, I should say, record of being correct, then they start to think, well, there is more to it. There is more to this life than what we can see. There are things that we that in the afterlife, it starts to get people to open up people's minds to it's not just the concrete world. There's a whole other level of world that we live in, and yes, you too can tap into that. So in that way, I think the predictions are of value. In other ways, when I correctly predict a resolution to something that someone is extremely worried about, that gives them some courage around that issue and helps them move through the fear as well. So there's value in that also. But I think for me, the work that I do, it is about getting people to open up to their spirituality in a way that they may not have done so before. When I make videos, I often have spirit appearing in orbs around me. So you'll see balls of light. I've had several people have screen captured them, several winged orbs flying into my cards or coming out of my chest. And, you know, you can explain that, well, that might be what the old fairy folklore was all about, these flying things. Now, I've got one screenshot on my website, so if anyone wants to go and see, they can go to revealinglighttarot.com and have a look at the winged orb, because I've got viewerships who are pretty technical and work within, you know, they're able to capture the orbs quite well. So what are these things? People often ask me that they see because they're so prominent in the videos that I make. It's a combination of passed over loved ones checking in, because that's the thing that people, when we're grieving, we don't understand that they are still here. They are around us. They're checking in on us. They are able to give us whatever strength they can. I've woken up in the morning after a particularly bad health issue, because that's the legacy of cancer. It's they say it's a gift that keeps on giving with a very wry smile. But I've woken up and seen people standing at the end of my bed. And that would have really frightened me previously, before cancer. But I just go, okay, somebody's standing there trying to help me, whether it's through dreams or lending their strength. And it's likely a passed over loved one. My mother often checks in on me, and she will touch my hair during a reading. That's her particular calling card. So again, when we lose someone we love, to understand, and even with pets, that they are still the bright memories, particularly for pets, for dogs, the bright memories that we have with them is what they still have once they pass over. And yes, they too are with us in spirit. You know, they might be sitting on their favourite cushion. You might look over and just sense their presence. Nothing is ever really lost, is what I'm saying. And that's a great comfort to many.
Well, here's another experience I had now that you're talking about this. I had a friend that committed suicide. It happened, my son was already born, so he had met my son, who was a little kid, and then my daughter was born 2 years later. So it was in that window of like 2 years of him passing that she was born. So we were in the delivery room, and I sensed that he was there. I can't tell you, I can't describe how I sensed it, but I knew he was there. I didn't say anything. I didn't tell anybody. I just went, oh, Bill's here, Yeah, that's weird, or, whatever. I felt that he hadn't crossed over from wherever you go to. Especially with a suicide, I think there's a lot of discomfort and unsure about where to go, or how to transition. Anyway, but I felt him there, and he was watching, and he was, however you can help. I don't know. He was there. So I just went, oh, all right. And then I just, got caught up in the delivery and the baby and all that stuff. And we come home a few days later, and, I'm talking to, maybe a week later, and I'm talking to my wife. And she just sort of matter-of-factly goes, Bill was there, during the birth.
Yeah.
And I go, yeah. You could tell? She goes, yeah, he was there. She didn't even know him all that well. I mean, I'd known him since we were, 13. So I had known him for, almost 20 years, And
she'd only met him a few times, and I was like, oh my, and I was like, well, if I don't believe something happened, if both of us had this experience, and I never said a word to her about it until she brought it up, and it was just very matter of fact. It was kind of like, it wasn't even a big deal. It was cool, but it wasn't like a huge deal. Like nobody was freaked out by it really. It was just kind of like, well, it must have something happened in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I unfortunately had also had a friend who unsubscribed and from life, and he came most visibly to me. This is pre-cancer, so I shouldn't say I depressed everything. He came very visibly to me. I think it was the night after he had passed, and he came as light, and I felt his presence in that heart chakra space, and it went right up to the heavens, and I knew that he was free. I knew that
No.
what he was trying to say to me was, I am free from the darkness. Yeah, so didn't make it any less sad to have lost him in that way,
No,
given that
it's
I was one of the last people to speak to him. And with all my intuition, I didn't. I ignored the signs that he was in. I knew he was in trouble, and we organised psychologists and psychiatrists and all sorts of things. But the actual signs were very clearly there in hindsight that he was checking out. And with all my intuition, I missed that because I was very close to
yeah,
the situation.
pretty fascinating stuff. I mean, you don't want to have to experience that, but at least you can tell there's more than what's on the surface.
Absolutely, yeah.
How do you work with people? How does that? I mean, obviously you have some global issues because you're
Yeah,
talking about planes and popes and things like
yes,
that. But did you work with
yeah.
personally with personal
I
people?
used to, but I
Mhm.
found working personally with people took a lot of my energy,
Mhm.
and I still needed energy to maintain my health, which of course never really goes back to what it was prior to cancer. You have radical surgeries and you
Yeah.
have radiation and chemo, and they leave their mark. And so I did that for a few years, but I just had to stop it because it was just too yeah, depleting me.
Yeah.
And so now I work across spiritual social media platforms. I have a number of them. The main one is on YouTube, and I run a channel that revealing light, tarot, astrology, and spirituality. I will channel various people. I will look at astrology. I love astrology. I'm a student of astrology. I think you always are, even though I've been at it now for 6 or 7 years. But I love to look at the charts and to use that big picture thinking to look at what a chart is actually saying in its entirety, and then to hone in on those individual planets and aspects that are going to indicate themes and events. So I do channeling and exercising that mediumship work. I do tarot readings on current events. I do a lot of clairvoyance, and as I said, it's the strongest of my. If you look at your suit of skills, it's the strongest that I have, and so I find the pure predictions that are correct come from the pure clairvoyance. And if I interpret it correctly, if I get out of the way of it, get out of the way of my wishes and desires and ego, and purely hone into what I'm being given, I get it right every time. So the channel that I have there on YouTube is large, and it's large because more often than not I get it correct, but I'm not right all the time. And I think anybody that's coming to divination needs to understand that we are human and we're not going to be correct all the
Mhm.
time. But often enough we are. I also have another spiritual channel where I'm a former journalist, and I do more a spiritual journalism type thing on Random Sage, and that's a podcast as well, an audio podcast. And I've got various platforms across the social media that I operate. So I'm very much in that space where I'm looking across the globe. It's it's the US, it's the EU, it's the UK, we're living in a multipolar world now. And anyone who doesn't realize that, not unipolar. It's the West isn't it's the build up of the South, and the world is a changing place. And unfortunately, any change, including my cancer journey, is going to be difficult. It's, when you're remaking, when things are being remade, when great change is occurring, there's going to be a process of upheaval. And I think that's what we're living through globally at the moment. You've got allies being realigned, you've got conflicts breaking out in the world, and the failure of our diplomacy to stop them. Like, it's, this is what, honestly, I get quite incredulous that, we're not using that strong diplomacy anymore. Those old skills and that took us through world wars, post world wars, and aligning the world. That's, in a sense, has broken down. So it is a very tough time for many of us at this time. So the work that I do is aimed, it's in service, because I think at the end of the day, when we do crossover, one of the huge benchmarks, if I can use that word, is going to be, what sort of service were you to others? And I try and be of service now. So it's less about me and my ego. In fact, I didn't even mean to do this post-cancer. I just fell into it. So there is the straight clairvoyance, but there's also intuition as well. And I like to quote Carl Jung, the psychoanalyst, the great Carl Jung, who said that intuition is a combination of an analytical analysis and gut, if you like, gut knowing, looking round a corner at all the possibilities that can happen and using both those skills to make a prediction. And so I do a lot of that as well. So it's not just, yes, there's pure clairvoyance, but there's also, I have a research degree, so I put that to use. I've got a journalistic degree and a communications degree. I put that to use. I've got an education degree. I put that to use. I bring all that I did, that fertilized my previous career, is still operational in the metaphysical and spiritual work that I do today. And so it's designed for this time. I'm here and doing this work for this time, and hopefully I'm of service to give people insights, the sparks of insight that increase their understanding and relieve in some way, chip away at that fear when they're able to, on their own, have that perception about why something is occurring. And of course, that then opens up that discovery pathway for them in multiple ways. And that's a very small snapshot of what happened to me when I went through cancer.
So the YouTube channel is called Revealing Light. Is that what it's called?
Yep, Revealing Light, Tarot, Astrology, and Spirituality.
Okay. People might want to go check that out. You can see the aura.
Yeah, absolutely. Or go to my website as well, because there is that screenshot that I think a musical producer captured for me. And that's on there's a link to it on my landing page under orbs and apparitions or something like that. And they can go right there and have a look at that. And I've also had clairaudient stuff come over the microphone in the videos as well. And one was my friend who unsubscribed. I was telling them the story, and I was actually quite sad. And I said the thing that really, really stuck with me was I never got the opportunity or the chance to say goodbye. And straight after, as I was saying that, the word goodbye came across the microphone in a male's voice, not in mine.
Whoa.
So, yes. So,
yeah.
This is the richness of living spiritually. It's healing. It's abundant. It's very, very, very rewarding.
You know what I find when the times that I talk about this stuff with people, and I'll, maybe tell one of those stories that I just told you, or another one. I've had a number of them, and most people have them. That's what I've discovered, is that most people go, oh, I've had, people keep it a secret in a sense because they're not sure what kind of reaction they're going to get. But if you go first and you say something and you maybe tell a little story like that, you're going to get almost every single person that's not completely shut down to tell you something very similar.
Absolutely. So it's common. It's common.
Yes.
These experiences are common.
It's not rare. That's how I would put it. It's not a rare thing.
So then why haven't we got someone studying spiritual energy? And I mean, yes,
we do. There are people that do that.
Yeah.
Of course there are.
But I'm talking from a physicist type.
Oh, well,
way.
there are some, places that do experiments and research. There's a place in Northern California called the Noetic Institute. They do a lot of stuff on that.
Yes.
So it's I don't think there's big bucks in it. One of the things that you talked about was being a child, and I think and having these abilities and being sort of, there was no encouragement for it, or nobody to really talk to, no mentors, no ways to foster that. But I think that when people are very young, they're so pure and so undamaged and so unsocialized yet that they have those experiences. They can't articulate them necessarily, and they probably don't have people to talk to about it. I mean, that art teacher was certainly on the right track. There was a sense that, and who knows how much she really understood, maybe more than she let on, because it was a kid and she didn't want to cross a boundary, and it was a Catholic school. There's a lot of ways to sort of put the brakes on that stuff. But I think when sometimes you do find kids that have older either parents or grandparents that also have those kinds of abilities, or less filters in front of the abilities, let's put it that way. And they get very encouraged as children. There's not a lot of them, but there are. I've met a few people like that. Oh, my grandmother had this thing, and she recognized it. I mean, she taught me things, and I love hearing those stories. I mean, it's out there stuff for most people, and I don't spend a lot of time on it, but I am completely fascinated by it, because I don't know where I'm going after I pass away, but I think I'll be back in some way.
Yeah, that's concept of reincarnation that you can pursue through astrology, which is again, it helps you answer certain questions. Unfortunately, people with abilities, very, very strong abilities. I mean, I was lucky that I kind of shut it down in some way, but other people with very strong abilities are so misunderstood for most of their lives, unfortunately. It's not a thing as a society that we nurture.
Yeah, I think maybe more ancient times it was a little bit more accepted.
Yes.
It's considered a little, primitive or something, not in a good way, when it should be.
And it's the opposite of primitive. It's actually using your higher mind.
Thank you so much for talking to me today. I hope I didn't wear you out, because we talked about going for an hour. We did
it's been lovely.
We actually went for an hour. You didn't know you were going to have such a good time, did you?
No, it's been lovely to sit and chat with you. Absolutely, Bob. Yeah.
Thank you, Maryann. So delightful. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll enjoy my evening. Once again, just wonderful talking to you.
Thank you very much, Bob, and it was lovely to meet you today. Thank you.
Much appreciation for you folks listening to The Exploding Human. The website is theexplodinghuman.com. You can also listen on YouTube. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Once again, I want to thank Maryann Weston for being on the show. Check out her website, revealinglighttarot.com. You can also find her that way on YouTube. Have a fantastic day. Thank you.